Two priests named John and Samuel are having lunch together. Says John, I think somebody in my congregation has stolen my bike. I can't find it anywhere. What do you think I should do? Samuel replies, this Sunday you have the whole congregation read the 10 Commandments aloud during your sermon. Hopefully whoever stole it will say thou shalt not steal, feel guilty, and return your bike. John agrees. Next week, when the two meet for lunch again, John happily reports having recovered his bike. See, said Samuel, I knew that reading the 10 Commandments would do the trick. Yes, John replies, we got to thou shalt not commit adultery, and I remembered where I'd left it. During a visit to the mental asylum, I asked the director, how do you determine whether or not a patient should be institutionalized? Well, said the director, we fill up a bathtub, then we offer a teaspoon, a teacup, and a bucket to the patient and ask him or her to empty the bathtub. Oh, I understand, I said. A normal person would use the bucket because it's bigger than the spoon or the teacup. No, said the director, a normal person would pull the bathtub drain plug. Now do you want a bed near the window? Or in the middle? An old man is at passport control in Paris. He is going through his bag for his passport, which he can't find. The irritated woman on passport control asks him, have you visited France before? Yes, replied the old man. Sarcastically she responds, well surely you should know to have your passport ready. To which he answers, I didn't have to show it last time. Impossible, she bellowed. The old man looks her straight in the eye and says, last time when I landed on D-Day on the 6th of June 1944, I couldn't find a fucking Frenchman to give it to. Ben and Josh were playing Call of Duty when their parents came charging into the living room. Dad shouts, you boys play that darn thing way too much, get your arses outside and play. I don't want to see you two until tea time. He kicks the boys outside, then turns to his wife. Alone at last, he says, unbuttoning his trousers. His wife gives a wicked smile and removes her top. A few minutes later, walking down the street, Ben turns to Josh. I can't believe we got kicked out of our own live stream. I know, says Josh looking at his phone, but you should see the views we're getting. A young boy had just gotten his driving permit. He asked his father, who was a minister, if they could discuss his use of the car. His father said to him, I'll make a deal with you. You bring your grades up, study your Bible a little, and get your hair cut, then we will talk about it. A month later, the boy came back and again asked his father if they could discuss his use of the car. His father said, son, I'm real proud of you. You have brought your grades up, you've studied your Bible diligently, but you didn't get your hair cut. The young man waited a moment and replied, you know, Dad, I've been thinking about that. You know, Samson had long hair. Moses had long hair, Noah had long hair, and even Jesus had long hair. His father replied, yes, son, and they walked everywhere they went. A man who owned a sausage factory was showing his arrogant asshole son around his factory. Try as he might to impress his snobbish son, his son would just sneer and look down his nose at everything. They approached the heart of the factory where the father thought this should impress him. He showed his son a machine and said, son, this is the heart of the factory. With this machine here we can put in a pig and out come sausages. The son, unimpressed, said, yes, but do you have a machine where you can put in a sausage and out comes a pig? The father, yes, son, we call it your mother. A lady about 8 months pregnant got on a bus. She noticed the man opposite her was smiling at her. She immediately moved to another seat. This time the smile turned into a grin, so she moved again. The man seemed more amused when on the fourth move, the man burst out laughing. She complained to the driver and he had the man arrested. The case came up in court. The judge asked the man, about 20 years old, what he had to say for himself. The young man replied, well, Your Honor, it was like this. When the lady got on the bus, I couldn't help but notice her condition. She sat down under a sign that said, the Double Mint twins are coming, and I grinned. Then she moved and sat under a sign that said, Logan's liniment will reduce the swelling, and I had to smile. Then she placed herself under a deodorant sign that said, William's big stick did the trick, and I could hardly contain myself. But, Your Honor, when she moved the fourth time and sat under a sign that said, Goodyear rubber could have prevented this accident, I just lost it. A man and his wife went to a livestock auction and looked at a farmer's selection of breeding bulls. The first pen had a sign that read, this bull mated 50 times last year. The man's wife playfully nudged him and said, wow, that's almost once per week. They walked to the second pen, which had a sign that read, this bull mated 150 times last year. The man's wife jabbed him a bit harder and said with a smirk, goodness, that's more than twice a week, you could learn a lot from him. They walked to the third pen, which had a sign that read, this bull mated 365 times last year. The man's wife aggressively elbowed him in the ribs and exclaimed, that's once a day. You could really learn something from this one. Annoyed, the man turned to his wife and said, go over and ask the farmer if every time was with the same old cow. A communist died and went to God for his final judgment. The God said, you have been faithless your whole life, I'm sending you to hell. Few months have passed since the communist went to hell, so God decided to visit him. Upon entering hell, God sees that everything has been automatized and running flawlessly. Impressed, God talks to the devil. I like the way you're running things here. What happened? That communist that you sent a few months ago, he did all this, my lord, replied the devil. Really? Can I have him for 3 months? He could help me do some cleanup in heaven. Of course, but please don't forget to give him back after 3 months, my lord. Agreed. So 3 months pass, but the communist is still not coming back. Curious to what's going on, the devil decides to visit heaven. When he enters heaven, everything is running smooth and impeccable. Not surprised, the devil decides to find God and speak to him about the damned soul he wants back. Lord, 3 months have passed, but the communist is still not back. What's going on? First, I'm not Lord, I am a comrade, and second, I probably don't even exist. An army colonel is newly assigned command of a unit. On his first day, he walks by a park bench with an armed private standing guard next to it. The colonel asks, "Son, why are you standing guard by this bench?" "I wouldn't know, sir," answers the private. "The sergeant assigned a guard duty for it, and today is my shift." Intrigued, the colonel visits the company HQ and asks for the captain. "Captain, why did you assign a guard duty to the park bench?" "Sir," answers the captain, "this has been a standing order by your retired predecessor ever since he took command of this unit 6 years ago. All I know is that on his very first day, he walked past that bench, briefly rested on it, and then, as soon as he reached HQ, his first order was to ensure that bench remains unused." After 2 months on the job, the colonel took some leave and traveled to the retirement home where his predecessor, now an old, crusty retired general, spends his days. General asks the colonel, "Do you remember why there is an armed guard assigned to the park bench where you sat 6 years ago?" The general stands dumbfounded for a moment, then asks, "You mean the paint still hasn't dried?"